they were trying to save her life, figure out what was wrong with her. And I didn't do this kind of work back then, but I dabbled in other things. And so my friend said, can you just see if you can talk to, she called her Baba for her grandma.
Mm.
Can you talk to Baba and see what you get? And literally, back then I had to meditate to do it. I went into a meditation and woke up energetically in her room in Pittsburgh. And I would ask her questions, and she would take this deep breath. And when she did, she'd breathe me in. It was like I turned into a mist, and I'd go through the cardiovascular system, and she'd spit me back out in the chair. And she'd breathe in, I'd go through the nervous system. So when I was done with all the systems, I had all this information. She said her goodbyes. And I woke up 3 days later in Atlanta and had like 15 books of notes that I had taken. And everything she had given me was absolutely spot on. It was amazing.
Now, when
But I
you
hid
took,
from it for a long time.
yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, you are one of the pioneers in that. I've never heard of anyone doing that before you. I don't know if anyone ever that I've met has done it in the way that you do. When you were in there, were you seeing something? Was spirit or God giving you intuition and knowledge about what was going on in the body? How did the information come in? I don't know if I've ever
No,
asked you that.
no, there was a movie, I think it was Dennis Quaid was in, where he was like in this little capsule and somebody swallowed him, and he like, that was literally how I went through each of the systems. Like I went
Wow.
flushed through her cardiovascular system, flushed through her nerves, flushed through her digestive tract, everything was like being inside of the body and flushing through.
Now, a lot of people will say, okay, that's interesting. What's in there? And I'm going to ask you that question. What did you find energetically in those spaces in the body?
Oh, she had a lot going on. They unfortunately weren't able to save her. I was amazed that my friend was able to talk her mother into the test that she said needed to be run. Because how do you just go up to a doctor these days? And again, this was 30 something years ago, but how do you go up to a doctor and say, hey, I need you to run this test? Most of the time, they're not going to listen to your opinion, right?
Mm.
Um, but like going through the cardiovascular system was fascinating because you're just kind of in there with the cholesterol floating down and the red blood cells and the white blood cells. And kind of that's really where I got my love of the science because I'm always asking questions. What is that? When I teach my mentorship programs, I'm always going, okay, you guys aren't asking enough questions. You have to ask, what is that, like a million times until
That's right.
you're able to recognize it. And then next time you go, okay, now I've dove into this person. I go, that looks like a red blood cell when I was in this other person. Is that what that is? Yes or no? So I call that an energetic signature. So a lot of things have kind of an energetic signature, and you learn
Mm.
what they are by look, feel, intuition, consciousness, whatever word you want to use for that. So when you run into it again, you instantly know, okay, is that what this is? I've seen this before. Is this the same thing?
Oh, I love that idea of an energetic signature because it sounds to me like there's a pattern. And when there's a pattern, perhaps there's also a way to solve that, to bring some alleviation to that common pattern. And what you've been noticing is a little bit of a pattern going on that you've dubbed, or maybe as someone else dubbed, the hidden epidemic. What is the pattern you're seeing in the hundreds of thousands of bodies that you're surveying and accessing through this intuitive wisdom?
So statistically, they say that there's 40% of the world's adult population have insulin resistance. When I survey the bodies that I pull in, and I'm not pulling in just my clients, I'll pull in just groups of millions here and there
Oh my
just to see
gosh.
what their bodies are saying each time. They would tell you that it's way higher than that. It's probably closer to 75% of adults. And it's, the number, the age is getting lower and lower. So, adult, it used to be kind of over 30. Now it's kind of down to, the 20s.
Mm.
And it's just heartbreaking to see that high of the population has this problem. And it's higher in the more developed countries than it is the less developed countries. But you have to remember they're also not eating the trash that's in our food supply. So that, I just gave you a hint there. That's
Hmm.
one of our big reasons for it. There's lots of reasons. I'm sure we'll get there, but the food supply is definitely not helping.
Interesting. And, there's a lot of energetics around this too that we're going to be diving into. And you've been interestingly, revolutionizing a lot of what you do as you're getting more and more tools to help with some of the things happening on the planet. Things like divine source code work, electromagnetic work, metabolic reprogramming. Anything you want to share about that? Because for those of you that are familiar with Lynn, everything just got elevated quite a bit. We're going to be talking about what some of these things are. Anything you want to share about that? And then we're going to dive into kind of what's going on with the bodies and what we can do about it.
So these are really interesting things I thought that God gave me. The first one was divine source code therapy.
Mm,
So if you take, everybody knows that it's like a helix, right? It looks kind of like a ladder, but it's twisted, right? Well, if you untwist all that, it's more like a piano keyboard. And so when you are expressing DNA, each of those little slots that are like the keys can play a musical note. And so if you play these strings of DNA, you can hear these repeated patterns of what the body's trying to do, what it's trying to express. And when there is a mutation or when there's a problem somewhere, you'll hear a different sound. And so they call it sonification. And so I was sitting down playing with this and really kind of studying, well, how could we use that um, in the energetics of what I do? And it was like, okay, so this is another way to deal with like DNA and epigenetic issues that people are having and get them out of that because we can retune
yeah.
that DNA and retune the sounds coming from the keyboard.
Amazing. Amazing. And when we get into the idea of sound and frequency coming in, I wonder if that's not one of the reasons we're seeing some of these strange shifts in humanity, because what you're seeing is all these levels that are really very low health markers, if you will. I mean, they contribute substantially to a rise of a number of health conditions. They all seem to be rising in the bodies. So tell me about this hidden epidemic and what that really is. What does it mean, this hidden epidemic? What does that mean?
So, well, it's a hidden epidemic because the list of the symptoms are not in your face. You know, if you have, most people, if they have diabetes, they know it pretty easily. Frequent urination, they're thirsty all the time. Sometimes, you know, you get woozy and all this kind of stuff. You know, you're having problems. As soon as you eat something that's a carbohydrate, you have problems. So there's some pretty specific symptoms that might lead you to the fact that you might have diabetes or prediabetes. But these warning signs are so subtle that
Mm,
most people don't know what they are. And number two, when you go to the doctor, I don't think I've ever heard a doctor once. I don't think I've ever had a client tell me once that the doctor diagnosed him with insulin resistance. So they might have the high blood pressure. They might have the list of symptoms we're going to go through here in a
oh,
minute. They might have all these symptoms, and then they put you on a pill for high blood pressure, or they want to put you on a statin for your high cholesterol. So they have a pharmaceutical to fix what the symptom is, but they're not getting to what's actually causing that. And a lot of times it's this high percentage of insulin resistance in people. So here's some of the early warning signs. And I want you guys to listen. And, you know, you always see on Facebook, like, okay, how many of these 20 things do you
okay.
have? See what your score
Shoot me
is.
a thumbs up if you feel like you have any of these.
Okay,
Shoot
so
us a
what?
thumbs up. We don't want you to have them, but we'll be honest. I'll even shoot my thumb up if I've got them. Why not? Right?
So, unexpected weight gain, usually around the abdomen, sleep disturbances or sleep apnea. That's a big one people have been really complaining about a lot. Generalized inflammation, this can be anywhere. Irritability and moodiness, headaches, dizziness, constant hunger or sugar cravings, especially after you've already eaten, but yet you're still hungry. You still don't feel satisfied. Fatigue or energy crashes after a meal, a need for a nap. I've had so many clients lately say, man, I just have to have a nap. I just have to do it. Brain fog or difficulty focusing, high blood pressure or high cholesterol, fatty liver, frequent urination, anxiety or depression, skin tags and cysts and lipomas, those little fatty tumors where you get the lump under your skin, frequent infections, dark patches of skin, or dark skin folds, loss of muscle mass, retinopathy, polycystic ovarian and other hormonal problems, and accelerated aging. That's been a huge one that so many clients have brought up since COVID. Is I just feel and look like I used to look in my 30s, and now I look like I'm in my 50s. It's just been accelerated really, really fast. Well, a lot of them, it's from insulin resistance.
Amazing. Amazing. Aaron just said I got 10, 10 of these. Wow. Let me know. I know we threw a few. How many would you all say you are going through? Let me know in the chat. Let us know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let me know and keep sharing. This is a big challenge because it seems like it's a bit of a cascade. It kind of opens the door to a waterfall of other issues. And that's one of the things that I'm a little concerned about, is that it's on the rise. And yet once it opens its door, it's like it's everywhere and your body starts to break down. Why is that? First, from the thoughts, feelings, and emotions standpoint, what could be going on, Lynn, that might be causing these things to increase?
So even stress is a huge
Yeah.
one. So if people are stressed about, finances, about what's going on in the world,
Mm,
about family situations, whatever, that stress raises glucose levels as well as cortisol levels. And it totally makes the metabolism, the mechanism of chemical processes in the body, get out of whack. So that high cortisol that's constantly there creates inflammation. So does that high glucose. So depending on where that high inflammation lands will depend on where you might have a problem. So see, that's it. Kind of insulin resistance kind of reminds me of COVID. Remember, one person with COVID had blood clots, another one had lung issues, another one had gut issues. It showed up in different ways. Well, insulin resistance can be a lot like that, where because it affects so many different things, because that it's blood glucose level, right? So it's
mhm,
how high it is in the blood. Well, the blood goes throughout the whole body. So it can get to
mm.
any part of the body. So depending on where it kind of settles in for you will depend on where you might have one of the more serious ramifications of it.
Well, I want to share. We're getting a lot of comments back. This definitely has touched a nerve on folks, no pun intended. Teresa says I have the first and second of them. Kelly says I have half of them. 13 for sure. I don't know if we read 13. I don't
We
know.
read over 20.
We read that. Okay. Wow. That interesting. Judith K said 5. Martine said 3. Susan K said 3. Tatiana said almost all of the above. Jane said all the symptoms Lynn shared. Yes. Judy, 8. Really difficult to get doctors to order, I guess, to order insulin levels. About 5, says Dario. Sanila, sleep apnea. And yeah, high stress. Stress is the worst. Most of the symptoms mentioned plus stress. High blood pressure spikes, says Betsy. Wow. Lots of things coming in here. I have 15, says Diana. So, I mean, Lynn, this is something that obviously we want to get control of as best we can. What do you believe is going on maybe at like a humanity level that could be causing these rises? Is it food? Is it stuff in the air? Is it just our bodies trying to deal with the ascension energy and not being able to process all of the stuff coming up and that we're moving through? Or is it all of the above? And then what do we do with it?
It's really kind of all of the above. I mean, the things that you can manage personally are things like your diet and stress. We really, really have to learn these days. I never used to be the person that read labels, and now I have a certain set of things that I use and I eat. And after that, I don't even bother because I got so tired of even the healthy foods. I was just talking to a client the other day. The healthy foods all have the seed oils in them. Oh, we think we're being so healthy because instead of buying potato chips, we buy beet chips. Oh, that sounds good. But then the beet chips are still cooked in canola oil or sunflower
Mhm.
oil or a seed oil that then is killing us. Or we want some kind of we don't want to have to make our own smoothie. We don't have time. So we buy these kind of pre-mixed, really fun, tasty protein shakes or whatever, right? But they all have carrageenan in them. That's what makes them thick. That's the
Mm,
thickener. But carrageenan is horrific on the body. It causes generalized chronic inflammation throughout your body. So, so part of it is we just have so many things that are littered in our food supply, even the quote unquote healthy food. So you have to be so careful. And stress, we've already talked about it,
Yeah.
how horrible that is. Seed oils, we just talked about how horrible that is. You know, a big surprising one for me was some of the heavy metals,
Oh.
because I had a hair test done. I just wanted to see what was going on. And I
Mhm.
was a little high on cadmium. And most people don't even think about cadmium.
Mm.
I was aware of cadmium because we had some animals that actually had cadmium poisoning because it comes out of your car's exhaust.
That's
So
what I
that's why
was
you
thinking. Car
that's
exhaust. Yeah.
so that's why you see a lot of farms next to the highways, so that if somebody's going to get
Ooh.
sick from it, it's going to be the animals, right? And the same thing with the big power lines that go down. But it's also in fertilizers and industrial waste and batteries and pigments and plastics and everything else. And I thought, okay, there's something we're missing. What is it? And then I looked it up, and sure enough, it is ored from zinc, some from zinc mines. And I don't know if you recall this, but back when COVID was around and everybody kept saying, oh, you're supposed to take zinc and vitamin D. If I took zinc, literally my hands the next day would all be just mangled and look like I had RA for years, rheumatoid arthritis for
Right.
years.
Oh
And
my
it was from
gosh.
the zinc was reacting in my body. And so I thought, that's interesting. I wonder how many people are getting cadmium poisoning from their zinc, right? Because
Mm.
the two are kind of they come together, right? And another one is even mercury. And I know, especially Americans, we get so tired of talking about things. It's going to be expensive to get them taken out. And, you know, we don't want to deal with it and all that kind of stuff. What's the best choice for it and things? But literally every time you breathe, you're breathing in that mercury gas and it's going right up into the brain. Every time you eat, it's making that mercury, it's activating it and making that mercury gas come off. And so when you breathe that in, it creates what's called hyperinsulinemia. So you have insulin resistance, which basically your body doesn't know how to properly respond to the insulin. So your glucose levels go up. And then you have the hyperinsulinemia, which is you still have insulin resistance. The body doesn't know how to do it, but the body keeps then making insulin to try to make
Right.
up for it.
Right.
So you get too much insulin in there and it creates an even bigger problem. Now you got high insulin and high blood sugar. How's that for an interesting conundrum?
Right, right. It's super interesting. And you were talking about mercury fillings, right? So if you have
Yes.
mercury fill, okay, yeah. The other thing that I found to be very interesting, and I'm so glad that you are discovering ways that we can actually rebalance our body. And we're going to be talking about another thing that you're uncovering called the living matter reset. Everyone write that down, living matter reset, or the LMR. This is something Lynn is going to be debuting and talking about today. Um, Sleep. I had no idea fully that sleep had such an impact on how our bodies actually processed glucose and insulin. And what are you discovering on sleep? And in today's blue light filled world, I mean, this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. If you guys don't know about your blue light on your computer, on your phone, on whatever, you need to learn how to turn it off because it's a huge problem.
Hmm.
And just one night of sleep, isn't that amazing? One night of bad sleep is going to raise your blood glucose levels. And so this is also a lot of reasons why people wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning because they get a glucose spike and the body's reacting to it. And so you wake up. The kidneys are reacting to it. So you wake up. So this is just another potential chronic disease that can come from it.
Interesting. Yeah, sleep it. Let me know how y'all are doing with sleep because a lot of people have had really bad sleep recently. It feels like over the last 5 years, a lot of people have written in about sleep declining. So let me know what's going on. The thing that I find to be super interesting and I love about your work is this isn't like doom and gloom. It's actually being able to say, these are the energies that are showing up to you as the body channel, Lynn, And now you've created these consciousness and energy solutions to rebalance this. And one of them is the truth that our genetics, whether we're really good at, processing insulin or not, it's not your destiny. You've been really diving into epigenetics. So what are you discovering there?
So there are a lot of different codes within the body. I mean, some of
Mm.
them they have maps, some of them that they don't. I don't prescribe to say I know what each of these are. I just go in and I know that God says, okay, that one right there inside that double helix is part of the problem. We need to do whatever to that.
Oh, okay.
And so that's where this divine source energy code therapy is going to come in handy, is playing your personal song of your DNA and looking to see where the blips are, where the changes are, where the mutations are, where epigenetics have switched things to help to switch them back. So to me, this whole series is really about like a divine reset.
Wow.
Your computer, if your computer has problems, they say, okay, Lynn, can we just wipe the whole thing and kind of go back to the default settings from the factory and maybe that'll fix it. So
Yeah.
this is kind of trying to go back to God's default of where should these be before these things came in and started flipping these switches and changing things around.
I know I'm going to get in trouble. I know I'm going to say something, and there's going to be a few people say, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said it." But part of me just wanted to say that this whole pandemic thing and all of the Fauci mess and the Bill Gates and all of these people, at some level, I feel like this sort of clicks some switches somewhere in humanity. And now we got the answer. We're going to reset it back. We're going to stick a thumb in the eye of these sick people that wanted to take us off the planet, and we're going to rise again. And in fact, it's already happening. So I just wanted to say that because that gets me really excited. And I like, I like to stick the thumb in the eyes every once in a while. So yeah, I mean,
Get it off your chest,
I got to
Darius.
get it off my chest. Because I'm like, I really know, like, it was not about health. I mean, there was just stuff coming out. It's ridiculous. And I feel like it did. It turned some switches in people that really weren't supposed to be turned on. And I don't know how all that works. Let me know. Do you ever feel like that? Like some of this stuff just changed you and you want to flip the switches back to when you felt your best. Let me know if that resonates with you because that's what I feel. I feel that in people. Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes.
I'm
Yes. Yes.
always
Yes.
looking, I'm always looking for the
Yeah.
positive thing out of it.
Yeah.
And no, I hate the fact that people were injured and people died from the whole thing. I'm so upset over that. But at the same time, if it's going to happen, I feel like it has allowed a whole new group of people to kind of wake up and go. I mean, and I was
Mhm.
one of them for a while. I love my country, don't get me wrong, but I always thought, the government had our back, the doctors had our back, everybody had our back, we had each other's back. And that just really showed me that that really isn't the case in a
Yeah.
lot of places. And so, we have to make sure that we look for ourselves and we look for each other and help each other rather than going to some of the doctors that were implicit in this and some of the government who was implicit in this. So, I think it helped a lot of people wake up because there's a lot of people that they're not going to ever take a shot again. They're not going to do it a second time.
Yeah, Sherry said, I agree, Darius. I had to be vaccinated within 6 weeks, had horrible hip and knee inflammation. Judith said, I'd love to flip the switches back. Lots of yeses, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Had to go through the whole thing, name calling, people not accepting me, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, even epigenetically, just through thoughts, feelings, and emotions, like we could have turned on almost like this like permanent fight or flight response even if we didn't do anything because our world didn't feel safe. And when your world doesn't feel safe and you're constantly pumping out all this cortisol, you are in fear. Your body is not processing insulin, it's not regulating things the right way. It makes it very hard to maintain that optimal health like we used to have, because it was a huge mass program put on people, a whole fear grid that was put on people. Some call it a mass formation, and some people are still in that or we're feeling the effects of it. So yeah, we're going to be talking more and more about flipping those switches back. I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing because what I think has happened is you've come up with some new ways to help flip the switches back. One of them is metabolic reprogramming. And I've never heard you talk about this. What is the discovery you've made on metabolic reprogramming? Then we're going to get more to some of these details and take some callers.
So the metabolic reprogramming is kind of like programming a computer. So it's really looking at the chemical systems of the body, almost like a math problem.
Hmm.
And it's almost like something out of the movie The Matrix, the pluses and the minuses and things like that. And so it's literally going to be going back and looking at all these different pieces because you have all these different parts of your body. And if it in when it comes to blood glucose, since the blood goes everywhere, if
Mm-hmm.
one part of your body is not happy, guess what? Most of the others aren't going to be happy either. So we need to get it to the point where we have some joy, we have some happiness, we have some health in a couple of areas that then can domino back the other direction. So that's kind of what we're looking for with this reprogramming.
I love that. Yeah. So it's like you take one area, it sounds like, you reprogram that back to a certain vibrational level. We call it joy, health, vitality. And then that could inform or begin to entrain the other levels. Is that
Yes.
correct? Something of that sort?
That's it.
That's
And
it. Okay. Wow.
that's it.
That's amazing. I mean, and that's if you guys have ever watched like those little dials, I've shown pictures of them like that sort of they TikTok like two clocks that I think it's called a metronome. And basically they'll eventually, even though they're different at first, they'll eventually start in training to each other. Our body is the same way. So you take one area, you bring it back into alignment, and then it informs the other parts of the body. That is incredible. Wow, some big discoveries here. One area you've discovered too has to do with something very few people talk about. It
Mhm.
seems to be an emerging area that a lot of people are starting to realize maybe the root of an enormous amount of imbalances, and it has to do with the gut. And I know there's a lot of specifics here that probably none of us fully understand, but what did you start to discover about the role of the gut in this whole area of keeping this hidden epidemic at bay?
The gut is really becoming a really interesting study for me.
Hmm.
Really realizing that pretty much anything that happens in the body can be influenced by your gut. So they have just, for instance, they've come out and said that if you got Pfizer or Moderna, I don't know about the other ones, but if you got Pfizer or Moderna, literally it is killing off the bifidobacterium and the lactobacillus bacterium in your gut. Now,
Hmm.
that's just crazy. So when it
Yeah,
kills that off, this is one of the reasons why we are having so many people with this anxiety, depression, and anger. So, because your gut microbiome a lot of times runs your mental status and whether you're happy or sad or anxious or whatever, they have
that's
a
true.
communication level between the
That's
two of
true.
them. But literally, God was showing you this is one of the reasons why you have a lot of people that are just angry and you can't seem to talk with them. There's no way to reason with them. And that's a whole different epidemic. So, as it relates to this, there are
Wow.
certain bacteria that I found that literally will either strengthen the gut to help with insulin resistance, or there's other ones that if those levels are high or levels are low, depending on which one it is, then it will affect and create insulin resistance. So to me, the gut has to be worked on with just about everything because it influences everything.
Yeah, I've actually looked into this and I was fascinated to learn that the gut actually plays a huge role in serotonin production. And there's
Yes.
some estimates like 70% to 90% of our serotonin is actually stored in the gastrointestinal tract. And it's a neurotransmitter and hormone that influences mood, digestion, appetite. And it's this gut brain connection that is super, super, on the forefront of our health. And I'm wondering if that's why there's so many people out there that are just like so angry and kind of gone like crazy. And I'm wondering if that's tied to, something they've done, but this is super important. There's also some emerging research about cancer and gut microbiomes being out of balance, and other things like that as well. But keep going, Lynn. What else have you discovered about the gut? What else is important here?
Well, and then we just have things like we have certain sugars and certain
Okay.
carbohydrates that create problems. Again, that goes back to our food supply and what we're eating and how a lot of people eat so many carbs and what that's actually doing to the body. And then a lot of the heavy metals that we kind of talked about earlier, they like nice, soft tissue. So they like the brain, they like the gut, they like the lungs, they like even the ends of the joints and things like that. So it's a huge piece.
Yeah, this is enormous. We're going to be diving into more of this as we kind of plug in. Let me know what questions you have for Lynn, as she's going to be unveiling some new energy technologies today to actually help with this epidemic affecting people all over the world. I think Shelly wrote in, I think it was Shelly said, I've actually heard that 90% of the people have this hidden epidemic. And so we're going to be looking at the bodies and see what's going on. What is the living matter reset? I've been wanting to ask you about this, and I alluded to it. LMR. This is actually dealing with this molecular fabric that you call it, fascia, connective tissue, and other sort of matrices in our body. What did you discover about that? What was showing up?
So just think that you have like this, your fascia we've talked about is like just this one big sheath that kind of wraps around, and you have these different matrices that are in there, and you have
Right.
your skeleton in there, and you have your DNA. And those matrices basically are a reservoir for the electric charge. So that's the reason why, like in the summer, when you get too hot and you feel bad because your electrolytes are down, you've sweat a whole bunch of your water supply out. And so you need to replenish and get some electrolytes. Well, so you have to have the fluid and you have to have the charge. So the number of electrons. And those electrons can maintain the electrical homeostasis in your body. So that's needed. That's when you have enough electrolytes. But it also does what they call inflammatory preparedness. So that basically, if something happens, you have an injury or some pathogen comes in, that you're already ready to go and attack that,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So if your electron, your charge is enough, then your body will just neutralize either the pathogen or the injury and the problem. And therefore you don't have to be sick. You heal quick, right? But if your charge is not that because you have a lot of inflammation, you have some of these other diagnoses we've talked about or whatever, and so therefore your charge is lower, guess what? Now you're more susceptible to having problems. So this is like raising it's kind of the equivalent to me would be when we always talked about drinking alkaline water, which is trying to raise your charge, right? That's trying to raise your electron potential, because we know that if you're on the acid side in certain tissues, you're going to get the flu,
yes.
you're going to get bronchitis, you're going to get cancer, autoimmunes, whatever. The lower you drop, and then when you flip over to the alkaline side, then that's when all of a sudden, or the acidic side, then that's when all of a sudden you get major chronic disease. So we're going to use this living matter reset to try to turn that around. So imagine we're going to work on the DNA to make sure that your song is a beautiful song and doesn't have these blips in it with
Wow.
mutations. We didn't talk about electromagnetic therapy. I meant to mention that you asked or mentioned that a lot of people have been feeling sick in the last 5 years. That's from all this electromagnetic influence. Like the other day, just 5 people in my area here all had headaches in one day. And it was like, okay, what are they frying us with today? You know, me and all the neighbors. It's like, how is our whole community down
Mm,
in one
mm,
day?
mm.
So there's a lot of electromagnetic interference. So we're going to work on electromagnetic therapies to help with that. And then we're going to reprogram the metabolism, right? Those pluses and zeros to get the chemical side of the
Yeah.
body work. And then we're going to do this living matter reset to really then get that charge where it needs to be. And now your body's just going to be firing on all cylinders
Wow.
and
Wow.
working, and it will be able then to handle, if you're in contact with something, it will automatically resolve that for you rather than
Wow.
having to go through the pathogen.
Wow. All right. I want you to share that again because you had me at my body will be firing at all cylinders and feeling amazing. I want to ask y'all, how does that sound to have your body back, your health back, your vitality back, and feel like, hey, you know what? Everything's working the way I remember it. What is that worth? it's priceless. Now, if any of y'all are on the live stream on any of the social sites, I'm going to cut the live stream just to let you know you can catch the full session at the link below. And then we're going to go, if you're one of the lucky ones, on our live call on our UWealth Revolution page. We're going to go to some live callers. That's why you want to join our live calls and join our event. We'll see everyone else